Welcome everyone to the nightly Q&A for the 2022 Blood in the Snow Film Festival presented by Superchannel. I'm your host, Rob Bellamy, host of Bits Radio. You can hear this and many other shows at www.bitsradio.com. But for this festival, we are Bits TV, and we are here with some of the cast and crew of Cryo. Cryo, how are you guys doing?
Hi.
Good.
Great. Yeah, super
Awesome.
good.
What we'll do is we'll start with Barrett beside us here, and we'll kind of
Yeah.
introduce ourselves in a circle. Barrett, please go ahead.
Okay, I'm Barrett Bergen, and I am the co-writer and director of Cryo.
All right. I'm Mason Davis. I am a co-writer, a producer of, and I'm also one of the actors in the film Cryo.
Hi, I'm Jillian Petrie, and I play the psychologist in Cryo.
Excellent. So let's just start at the gate. This is with our festival being Canadian. This is a cross-border one because it mixes the countries. How did it start, and how did you guys end up being across the border like that?
I mean, well, I already came across the border because I actually am Canadian. So if we're gonna say where it all started, that
Yeah. on a cold winter night in 1999, she was born, and mother carried her past the border.
I'll take 1999 though. Yep, that's definitely the year I was born.
And Jillian's Canadian, and so is our director of photography, Roman, is also Canadian. I'm not sure that was something we really or at least me, maybe Mason and Jillian go way back, but when I met Jillian on the film, I didn't know that until that came out, and that kind of was something fun to learn about her, you know.
Okay.
All the best actors are Canadian.
That's right.
So this was not a pre-thought thing of doing a international type film. It was just coincidence, so to speak.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, excellent. Well, then how did this start? Like, how did you guys get together on this project?
That's a cool story. Sorry, Bear, I'm just going to chime in.
Yeah, you should.
It was summer in between semesters, film school, and I had worked with Barrett before on one of his short films, and I saw him make this post just saying, like, I feel like I want to make a feature film this summer, and I had been feeling the same thing, we're very like-minded in that way, where we just kind of go. Like, we're not going to let a degree tell us when we can make feature film. So I reached out to him, and I was like, dude, let's do it. And that was sort of how this all started to come together.
We were going to make a different project, and we actually secured quite a bit of funding for that project. But then it was a little ambitious. It was a little too big for what we could have pulled off. Because, I mean, as Mason mentioned, we were both film students at the time at two different film schools. And so we decided to pull the plug on that. But we thought, well, we still want to shoot something this summer. And that's when Cryo came about. I had an idea that I developed with a friend several years back. I mean, very, very broad, nothing specific. Just kind of the setup of, maybe murder mystery, sci-fi. And Mason and I decided that's really good for something pared down and simple. And we developed the script from there. We moved pretty fast. And then we reached out to some of the best actors that we knew, including Jillian. Both of us knew Morgan Gunter, who plays the biochemist, and Mason knew Kurt Dowsett, who played the engineer. I knew Emily Marie Palmer doing the doctor, and we kind of pulled together just kind of the best of the best that we knew in our local film community, and just ran with it and shot over the summer.
Interesting. So Jillian, these guys got together and said, we're going to make a movie over the summer, and you went, yes, like this is.
Oh. Yes, absolutely. So me and Mason, I was going to point this way. Me and Mason, we go way back. I'm trying. And we've been in 10 plus films together.
At least we're in double digits now of films we've been in together.
Yeah. And so I hadn't met Barrett yet, and he approached me and asked me if I wanted to be a part of this. And then I had to audition for Barrett because he didn't know me. He's like, who is this girl? And I auditioned. But yes, Mason was my connection. And I love making movies. It was a fun idea, fun concept. I always love working with Mason. So I was like, yeah, of course I'm on board.
And Jillian in her own right is a filmmaker. She's done what we've done. She's also has gone and produced and directed and made her own features. And so she knows what the hustle is like. And so I think she was more than willing to jump on board.
For sure.
That was kind of the key. We were looking for people just who wanted to play and wanted to make something for sort of the budget we were operating at and see where it would go. And so that's part of why the process, it took a while, you know, because we were kind of pulling it together and making work. Of course, COVID really kind of hit us a bit. But we were very happy with the result and really happy with collaborators like Jillian, who were so willing to keep coming back and keep letting us kind of tweak and you know, mess with this thing until we felt really happy with it.
One of the cool things we did with this script, other than myself, because it was an ensemble piece, you know, there's only 5 of us in the film for most of the film. But because it was a whodunit, we thought, what a good time to experiment with a creative concept by not letting any of the actors know which one of them actually did it. And so we kept the last 10 pages away from all the actors and let their performances speak to who they thought might be it, and as well as question themselves. And with it, I think it was the perfect time to gamble on something like that, because it was a very low budget film and we were able to experiment, and we got some just incredible performances from the cast.
Well, and that's actually one of the questions I wanted to ask too, because people constantly say how there's no original ideas. It's how you twist the ideas that are available. So if you look at yours, you have your frozen in time stories like Aliens, but then you have your amnesia, wake up amnesias like Pandorum. Where did you decide to throw that twist in there with the whodunit?
Yeah. Do you mind if I answer this one, Mason?
Yeah, I was pointing to you.
Oh,
sorry.
Gotcha. I think for me, I felt like the original pitch is not, it's something that I knew was out there. Funny enough, there's people who've like referenced movies that's a lot like in some ways, like Cube and I think like Dark Matter or Pandorum or something. I've never seen any of those films, and we hadn't seen them before we wrote it, but I could sense this is kind of archetypal, like, okay, scientists wake up, they can't remember anything. So I really wanted there to be a kind of a time element or something. It's like, what could make this more about something rather than just like, oh, somebody killed it. That's a fun setup, but I like it going somewhere a little bit more intricate. And I love stories that are telling you a different story and you don't know that that's what they're telling you until the very end. And there's some inspiration kind of from the Nolan brothers, you know, Westworld, Prestige a little bit. Annihilation was kind of an inspiration in terms of just something a little bit more ambiguous. And so once I pitched that to Mason, we both really got on board with this idea of like, oh, that helps shape kind of the direction of where we're taking things if you know they're repeating things over and over again, and then that sort of informed like, well, what if we're watching that at any given time? You know, if they're repeating things, then it can be a non-linear film masquerading as a linear film. And so that informed a lot of the stuff that you can go back and find. You know, we've gotten some blowback. People are like, a lot of inconsistencies and holes, and it's like there really aren't. Most of the things that feel that way are because you might be watching a different timeline at any given point. It all does kind of tie together. And we knew that was a risk. We knew that might not be everyone's cup of tea. But we found for the people that it was their cup of tea, they loved it. They're like, oh man, we see what you're doing, you know? And so it let us do something a little bit more sophisticated and experimental while still telling a fun sci-fi whodunit murder mystery genre piece.
Well, see, that to me is one of the best things of a film is when you can watch it and then go back and rewatch it and see that they're basically telling you the plot right in the movie. You're just not seeing it.
Yeah. I always look at it as like, I always told people, the first time you watch the movie, you watch it a whodunit, but the second time you watch it, you're watching a psychological thriller because now you understand the layers of what we actually did. And I mean, we've definitely had audience members not get it the first time, but then the second time they start to really see like the existential terror of the concept. And they're like, whoa, that kept me up at night.
Yeah, I had that same comment. And my hope is if you watch the film just now and and you didn't catch on to that stuff, our hope is that that's okay because it reads like a linear film. You got the gist. It's like, okay, the psychologist went on this journey. She realized she had done this before. She started it over. That's basically the gist. But it's all of these clues and things along the way that you're like, oh my gosh, this could be the 100th time or it could be the first time. And they're all mixing together in her head. And, kind of the point of that is how often do we repeat things in our own lives? If you were to wind back today, for you, Rob, like, would you do things exactly the same way? That's the dramatic question.
I hope not. I like to think I learn a little bit, but no. Well, then, Jillian, reading this script, what were your thoughts on this particular character? Because you are one of the pivotal out of this little ensemble.
I was really excited when I read the script, and like they said, I didn't know the last 10 pages. I had no idea what the ending was going to be. But as I spent more time with the script, as we spent more time filming, as I really dug in, and I saw like all those little subtleties that they put in there, like I saw my wardrobe change, and I'm like, something's different about, my jumpsuit. Like something's off. It's not the same. And my makeup would go between just like looking like I'd crawled out of a pit to like looking a little more fresh, and I was like, so, you start to figure it out, or you're seeing like all these different makeup changes or all these little subtle changes, even in the dialogue and in the script. So after spending that much time with it, I personally did admittedly figure it out that it was me, but I spent a lot of time with it. And I was like, the psychologist, she's the cause, right? I knew she was. And so I kind of dug into that just a little bit deeper. And then the last 10 pages we read right before we filmed it. And I was like, I knew it. But it was fun. It was fun for me to like figure it out and go along and seeing all those little subtle things that these two brilliantly put in.
But really, if anyone was going to figure it out, it would be the psychologist.
That's right.
That's fair.
Now, with this script too, like there is a lot of physical props and effects and things like that. How challenging was that? Like the sleeping shoot.
It was challenging, and a lot of it was keeping the story straight for our crew members, especially with the layers of timelines. And so with the script, after we had written and kind of identified which scenes, we sort of broke everything into 3 timelines, and the number didn't really matter, but as long as we knew what timeline 1 was the first time they ever went through it.
Mm-hmm.
And then timeline 2 was could be anywhere between like 50 and 100, and timeline 3 could be like the 1,000th time. Again, it didn't matter what the number was. They've just been doing this for a really, really long time. And so it was tough because, again, we're trying to keep the secrecy from the cast so they don't understand what's going on.
They were tricky. They didn't call it timeline 1, 2, and 3. Just so you know, when they said it to us, they're like, you need to go get in T1, T2, and T3. That's what we were told.
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry, keep going, Mason.
Well, but it was a huge that was the best we could do to help our art department and props and makeup, because like my character switching from being completely scarred all over his body to no scars at all, any given scene, and with no explanation. And so that was the best we could do to kind of keep everything a grip on it all, because otherwise it was just like, so we do have to give a lot to the patience of our crew for putting up with such a mental idea.
Yeah, that's true. We really tried to let the creative limitations guide us and take advantage of that rather than resist it. So like you mentioned the cryo chamber, we only had one of those, and we would just move it from, we would move it from room to room. And honestly, it was a leftover prop of a short film I had done that we kind of retrofitted and made more like what we needed it for to be this cryo machine. We also found the perfect location and kind of let the location shape some of the choices, because that place is super weird. It's just all underground, where we live in Utah. There's kind of a main street, and all these stores, and underneath there's this old 1800s old stone tunnels, and we built out of that and used things that we found down there. And so we really let that earthy kind of physicality guide the story and built into a location rather than try to force anything. And that's kind of what you have to do with a low budget independent film. You let the creativity limitations guide you. And then of course, Jillian and Mason, Jillian in particular has backgrounds in physicality and acting and stunt work and whatnot. And so we were purposeful about that in writing that big standoff at the end. I mean, that we had that in mind. We knew that was the background, and we're like, okay, we're going to lean into the things that we're all bringing here and make the stunt choreography feel good, and feel realistic. And so it was a lot of like, what do we have here? What can we work with? Let's throw spaghetti at the wall. We know what our twist is going to be, and let's get really focused and use the strengths that we have.
That's great. Especially like you said, for independent film, you don't want to waste anything, and you
Right.
don't, you need to use what you have.
Mhm.
Now, was there any, like you said, COVID started to play a factor in your filming? Did you film before COVID, or were you filming during?
We filmed before COVID. It played a large factor in post-production. It just slowed everything down. So our post process took a good while. And then also we ran into just some creative hurdles in trying to make all of the stuff, all the plates that we were spinning work, because you've got all the kind of fun, cerebral, tricky stuff, but you also need to make sure there's an emotional thread there that works in a normal linear way, whether you get what's really happening or not. And that was a great learning process for all of us, and for me in particular. And I think we came out of it with a really strong version of what we were trying to say from the very beginning.
We struggled as well with editors seeing Barrett's vision, because it is such on the surface, it just looks like a linear story, but there's so many layers that actually play into the story that makes it a very smart and brilliant concept that we had to go through a few editors before we found someone who could make sense of it.
Yeah, because they're trying to edit together a scene from like 3 different timelines.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where did you find an editor that could do that?
Oh, our editor, Aaron, is just a real talent. He and I have worked together many times in the past, and he likes a lot of the same movies that I do. And so when I'm bringing up stuff like the Nolans and Primer and, Looper and things that play with this kind of stuff, there's a good frame of reference there. I also noticed how certain people would kind of get it and others wouldn't, in terms of collaborators like our composer, Sam Clooney, who's based in the UK. Amazing talent. And there were things that he did with the music that demonstrated he really understood, that would underscore and kind of underpin. It's like, yeah, you're playing with time even in your music a little bit, that suggests, especially toward the end of the film, wait a minute. That's something kind of repeating a little bit. We're getting caught in the glitch of now, as the viewer, we're doing what they've been doing the whole time. We're kind of flashing in and out of these different timelines.
That didn't mess you up with the editing and scoring and trying to keep all that straight?
Oh, I mean, well, I've seen this darn thing so many times now. Like I can tell you at any given point what timeline they're in, just because I know. But certainly in the shooting, that's where it was at first very tricky and complicated.
But Barrett, I gotta give you it was so awesome working with Barrett, and he was such a good director to guide us through this. Like I just love working with Barrett. He's such a good director to guide us through this with us not fully understanding what's going on, but he guided all of us through each scene, being as like, how do I explain it? As vague as possible, but also giving you as much as you needed, because he couldn't give everything away to you, but he gave you everything that you needed for the scene, which was really, really great. So you would never know how tricky it was. These two didn't let on, They're like, they didn't let us know how tricky that all was, but yeah.
And the logic, I appreciate you saying that, Jillian. The logic behind it was simply, I thought it would, both Mason and I thought it would be cool to enhance the performances of the disorientation that we wanted the actors to convey on a deeper level, apart from just the situational, we have to survive and we're kind of learning who we are. I mean, it's like George Lucas didn't tell Mark Hamill about Darth Vader, and the reason is because he knew it would slightly influence how he played it, And so we were experimenting with that process. It's like, let's give these people feelings about each other as characters and suspicions about one another without giving them what's really happening, because what's really happening is so fundamental to what's happening all the time, all at once for these characters every single week. And it would just be too huge, in my opinion, of a revelation, you know?
No doubt. Okay. Well, everybody watching at home, we hope you enjoyed the film and this Q&A. We're going to keep chatting. So if you want to hear what we're about to say, tune into bitsradio.com. That way you can check out the rest of this podcast. But other than that, we hope you enjoyed the film and we hope you stick around for the rest of the festival. We'll see you all soon. Freeze frame. And we're in podcast. There we go.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yes.
Great. Now we can relax, finally.
I know.
Woo.
Can
Profanity.
unclench.
Now we can get weird. This is
Yes.
unclenched.
That's fun stuff. No, I was wondering because I confess that I watched it twice. The first time I watched it, I was slightly distracted because I was checking out the Q&A schedule and various other things. So there were a couple times I looked up and it's like, I don't remember them changing, but okay, they must have changed at some point, and I just rolled with it. But when I got to the end, it's like, okay, wait a minute, I missed something big. And I went back and I just sat uninterrupted and watched it, and it was brilliant. The different little subtle changes. So, like, that's what I mean. Like, when you're filming that, how do you keep track of that? Like, I would go insane.
For us, I
They
think
did.
I think it
No,
was
I'm just kidding.
we did go insane. Everybody
Yeah,
lost
a little bit.
I have to hand it to our crew. I think Mason and I got very organized. We had to know what was happening in each scene. And then we, as Jillian mentioned, we put a little T1, T2, T3. It's not that there's only three timelines in the film, but it was just, this is to mark differentiation. This is to be as consistent as we can with this idea that you might be watching a different one in every scene besides the very first one. And so while the actors were in the dark a bit, the crew was well aware of what we were trying to pull off. And to your point, Rob, like, you know, of course you shoot a movie out of order already. So it's just, but what we would do is we would shoot all the scenes for, you know, a particular location in 1 or 2 days. And we would try to do it in the correct order. So for the crew, it's like, hey, don't think about the story chronologically. This is, you know, Jillian and Morgan and Mason and Emily characters. Chronologically, this is the first time they're ever doing anything. Just ignore what they're saying. But they're in their first jumpsuit and there's this. And then we'd stop and we'd break and then they would go to makeup and wardrobe and switch. And like, then with the crew, we're like, okay, chronologically, this is now like 100 times later. You know, this is like 2 years later, and then we'd set everything up for that, and it's more or less the same, but now the crew is informed. They have context of chronologically what's happening in the story, even though it's totally non-linear in the way. If you were to make a linear cut of the movie, it wouldn't make any sense at all. You'd just be getting weird little scenes across this time. I hope that makes sense. And
No, it
trying to
makes
explain
perfect
it.
Yeah, you would need the crew in on that because set decorating alone, you know.
Oh yeah.
The little subtle, like the gun off to the side at the end. That's the one. That's what keyed me into that. I missed a lot. That gun off to the side. It's like, okay, wait a minute. So yeah, you would need that. That's amazing. I gotta say.
Well, I remember on the first day we had a production meeting before the actors came in and told them, and maybe it was a pre-production day, but we had to tell everyone, you cannot talk about this in front of the actors. You cannot talk about, if you have questions, you have to privately ask, you know, Barrett or one of the producers, what's going on, because we can't we didn't want any of that to slip with the actors and them to catch on that they're playing different timelines.
Yeah, that's the other thing is,
go ahead, you know, they were really good at not giving anything away because I tried. Don't think I didn't try.
Yeah, she did try.
I probably felt alienated and isolated.
But like
I
in
also
a loved way, you know.
I didn't want the actors coming up and asking all the time, like, now which timeline are we in and whatnot. It was easier to go, you're in the same headspace, now you just look way worse, you know. And it's like there's no explanation for it. And And so, like Jillian mentioned, I think everyone started to kind of figure it out by the end. But I liked keeping the ambiguity, and it should be solvable. That's the thing. Is like some people we've shown the film to, and like halfway through they figure out what's going on, and that makes me so happy, because it means that the pieces are there. You can put them together. It's just very hard to do so, and the pieces need to be able to fit. And so the fact that Jillian realized that it's like, I think I'm behind this, means that narratively, that's what we're pointing to. We're kind of hinting, timeline or not, we're hinting that, you know, she's the cause of this in some way. She just doesn't know why.
Yeah. What's interesting with her character is, and we reveal at the end, is she actually has two different motives depending on the timeline.
Yeah, that's right.
And that, I think, is such a really cool way to motivate a character's actions, is depending on when we're seeing her, is she's doing this for her father, or she's doing this to forget that she's the bad guy.
Which should suggest that depending on the information you have and the context, you will behave differently. But it should also suggest that maybe you would do the same thing with any information given to you, because in her heart of hearts, the psychologist wants to do this another time, whether for whatever reason it is, you know. And so then they're just stuck over
like
and
a
over
genetic
again.
thing almost.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's the idea. Is her character says, you know, it's crazy how, like, when you strip it all away, people are just pre-wired, you know, that they'll just kind of make those choices. And while I'm not personally a determinist, this is a very determinist film, in that it's like, to some extent, you're just going to be who you're going to be, and there's no stopping it, you know.
Well, look at it like that. I guess the first week of filming, that Jillian, you have to put a lot of trust in the directors and the producers.
Mhm.
How was it working like that? Like being so ambiguous, you know?
Well, I mean, I trust these two, so that part was easy. And then for me, it was a lot of fun to explore a character this way. Like Mason said, I am a filmmaker and I've done a lot of projects, and I love collaboration. I also love experimenting with new ways of filmmaking. And so not having that gave me another level to play with that I hadn't gotten to play as, you know, acting in anything before. It just gave me the opportunity to try something new and explore it. So I I was all in. I was all in trying this crazy project with these guys, and I'm really glad I did, because it totally paid off. I think it added an extra little level to it all.
I have to ask then, with this being so tightly knit, like the story, was there anything filmed that didn't make the cut, or anything in the script that you didn't film?
Yes, to both. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Or there was, well, in the script that we didn't film, I think we filmed everything.
We filmed everything, I believe.
Yeah, but there's plenty that didn't make the cut, and we went back for pickups a year later after principal photography to fix some things that worked better on paper than they did in a cut or on screen. Because, you know, you make a movie 3 times, and once you're editing, it's like, oh, that makes sense to a reader, but we need more of this or more of that. We need to fix these inserts. And so one of the advantages, I would say, even though we didn't like how long it took to complete the film, one of the advantages to doing it this way, where we're just like, we're gonna get some money together and we're gonna go out and make an indie film our way and ourselves, is we had the freedom to keep messing with it until it was like that. Now it's right, you know. If we had released the very first cut of the film, there were just some character things and some balance issues that we wouldn't have been able to do. And so generously, Jillian and the others came back and we shot some more stuff, and, you know, and in my opinion, those are actually the best scenes in the movie. The ones that we were returning to with more context. There's a few of those that really sing for me that I'm really proud of.
Yeah, likewise.
Wouldn't that be insane in your film, trying to you realize, okay, we have to edit out this portion, but then going through the rest of the film to make sure there's no reference to that portion of the film?
That's funny you say that.
Timeline.
That was a mess. It was a Jenga. It was a Jenga game. It was a house of cards, this thing. And we would try to move this, and then this would fall apart. And we're like, crap, maybe we may move this one over to this beginning part of the film. And you'd have to do that you have to do that anyway with editing. but not like this. I mean, this
Right.
is just this was just a freaking labyrinth, you
I
know.
hate doing that for editing, period, on one timeline, one
Yeah.
character timeline.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
can't
it's true.
imagine how hard was it to remove something then? Like when you're looking at it, you must have really needed to take it out if you decided to take it out.
So my favorite scene got cut. And maybe because I, had a good portion in writing it, but it was a conversation that I had with the doctor. My character has with the doctor about whether or not they believe in God. And it was a very interesting scene. But then when it got put in an edit, it was just like, what does this have to do with everything else? And what are we missing? And so Barrett crafted some crazy scene out of it, and then we went back and filmed a couple lines, and it was a whole different scene. And it's the scene where she's doing a checkup on me, and wasn't at all that was not the scene we wrote.
Yeah, the wides are a year earlier than the close-ups, and we used the lines we could and kind of retro fitted the scene with something new. That was a hard one to give up. I liked that one too. And on paper, thematically, it actually ties quite well to the whole inventor playing God and divine stuff, but it didn't work as well for building tension, which is what we needed to do with each character to make it work better as a whodunit. I mean, our editor could give you an earful about this. He was a champion for taking on,
It was
like, okay, if I move this over here, now this doesn't work at all. And to your point, they're referencing things there, and intentionally the film references things that haven't even happened yet in the movie because they did happen in a different timeline before. And so it's just this kind of circus ride, you know.
So are there any plans to revisit this universe? The universe is.
I had this conversation yesterday with a filmmaker friend, and because we've been asked, I know I have at least, like, well, what about a sequel? And it's like, well, the sequel's the same movie.
The sequel's the movie.
Exactly.
You just put a 2 on it, you know?
Yeah, until which would be really funny branding is to re-release the movie Cryo 2, and it should be the exact same film. But until a catalyst happens, which really the only catalyst that could happen to alter the whole thing is somebody from the outside world comes in,
right,
or the soldier dies. I think those are the only two things finally succumbs to his wounds, because we really hit the nail with the hammer that we're predestined to make the same choices, and we're just going to keep doing this. We're going to play this out for eternity until something else comes in to just throw it.
And they're not going to get too old because the cryo chamber keeps them young. I mean, it says that in the film. It kind of helps regenerate them. It heals them. Or if the world, ends or whatever they would be. And here's the thing is if we made a sequel to Cryo, it undercuts the whole point of the story, because the point of the story is that this will go on forever. It's an exploration of, it's kind of a poetic exploration of the concept of hell. What could be more hellish than being stuck in a loop forever, or as is mentioned in the Divine Comedy, the ninth circle of hell is the frozen lake. Everything's stuck. It's just there. And one of our crew members asked me that. It's like, when are we doing the sequel? And I was kind of like, did you not get it? Didn't you get it?
That is brilliant marketing.
No.
Yeah, right.
Cryo 2, Cryo 3.
One of the things I will add, though, as an actor, from the perspective as an actor, and I think Jillian can speak on this even more, was we're playing characters who have had their memories wiped. So it's very hard to develop a character that doesn't have character traits or things that we can pull from other than the few, like really the lines that we say, and then a little bit of information we get about who our roles are kind of in this group. And that made for for me, I was just so impressed to see what each actor did with it, with such limited information, because I mean, it's so hard to throw an actor in and be like, yeah, you don't get any information on who your character is. Now play a character. And not even the ending. So it's like, So I just got to congratulate all the actors and what they did with such little information, but still be able to create someone that was the people who were fun to watch and interesting to see.
I agree.
And speaking on that, like we thought about it. I mean, there was one little pickup shot we did. We're just for fun. I said the line like I didn't remember, and then we did one take as if the psychologist knew everything that was happening the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
And I can only imagine how different this character would be, or how different the film would be if the psychologist did remember everything and her motives behind everything. And so I was just thinking about like that's what would change it, because we did have, we had no information. I was the psychologist. So I went, just a funny tidbit is my mom is a psychologist. So I went and talked to her, and I had a big long conversation with her and said, give me the basics of a psychologist, because that's where I'm starting from, right? And so yeah, I just thought, it'd be fun and a whole new twist if the psychologist really knew and she was planning this the whole time.
Be a
That
different
is
way.
interesting.
I suppose that the character exploration is the only way. You asked Rob if we would ever revisit this world. You can only go backward. So you could do a prequel and like, who were these people? And the inventor's an interesting character to me. And like, why is this guy, and I have some feelings about him, like writing him, of what his background is and stuff. But it would be a completely different experience for everyone involved, because, Jillian and Mason and more, they would now have a person to inhabit, which is not the same person. If your mind's wiped, you're not the same person anymore. You're some new amnesia version of you that is forming who you are.
Well, yeah, literally, because when you're a child, you learn everything you are up until this point, and if you wipe that away, you don't have that history to call on.
Yeah,
that's very
right.
true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So this would literally be almost like a Blair Witch incident, where 1 and 2 are so different.
Yeah.
If you did this prequel.
Oh
yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
But it still would be interesting.
It'd be fun, because it'd be completely different. It'd have to be a totally different kind of movie, that then leads to the horror of what Cryo is.
That's excellent. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. This is a blast, and I so enjoyed your film. Like I said, I watched it twice. Well, once because I knew I missed something, but I know I'm going to watch it at least once more. I'm definitely going to watch it the night it airs. So
cool.
Awesome.
Thank you guys so much. If you guys ever have anything else coming up, let me know, because we would love to get you back on the show.
Cool. Thank you, Rob.
Great.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely will.
All right. And for everybody out there, Bits Radio will be back when we have our next interview. I don't know when that is, but stay tuned. We'll see y'all later.